I'm Louis Eisen, and this is the Policy Brief. I don't believe that policies should be combative and aggressive. They shouldn't sound like angry parents talking to bad children. They need to sound like adults talking to adults. And the problem with a lot of people's policies is that they're full of statements like, employees must never do this, and people should never do this, and no one should ever, and they sound like they were written by a drill sergeant. There's no need to sound like that. Now, it's not uncommon when I'm training this in a workshop that somebody objects to that approach and says, no, we need to be very strict in our organization. You don't understand how we work. We're a military organization. We're paramilitary. We're people, we expect the chain of command to come down. So here's my take on that. Think for a minute. What are the strictest laws in any country? The laws that forbid things. It's the criminal laws, the criminal code, the penal code. That's the strictest code, the strictest rules you will find in any country. How are those laws worded? Well, let's take a look. Let's take the example of kidnapping. I mean, that's pretty bad, right? The law doesn't say nobody should kidnap anybody else. People should never kidnap each other. The law doesn't use those kinds of terms. Look what it says. Here's an example from Pennsylvania. It's a simple declarative statement saying what will happen in a certain situation. Look at the wording and notice the absence of shoulds and musts and never. They don't exist. Here's an example from Texas. Again, there's no should, must never, must not. But even without those words, do you have any doubt in your mind that kidnapping is forbidden in Texas? I thought someone would challenge me on this one. I thought they'd say, you know, you're picking examples of things that have always been wrong. So this is simply a continuation of something that was never allowed in the first place. What if you had something that was allowed and then you introduced a law to forbid it? Okay, so I looked for an example of that. Dueling. For a long time, dueling was legal, and then dueling became illegal. Here's an example from the Canadian Criminal Code. Take a moment and read it. It doesn't say, dueling is hereby forbidden. From now on, no one is allowed to do dueling. No one must. Everyone should. It's a simple declarative statement. Anyone who does this is guilty of an offense and liable to imprisonment. There's no should, must, never. Contrast this approach with the rules we see coming from most organizations. Here's an example of a travel policy from a university, and I've taken pains to hide the name of the university so as not to embarrass them. Look at the tone of this language. There must be an approved source of funding, and these must conform in all respects to terms and conditions. You know from my other videos or from my articles that all this wording does is reveal how frustrated the university administration is with handling expense forms that are not in accordance with the guidelines. Here's an example from a transit authority in a large American city. These are their rules of conduct. And again, no person shall do this, no person shall do that. This one sounds like a power-hungry executive who's tired of people not listening. Here's one I found that's a library. In a library, it's again giving instructions. Employees must never do this, and people should not, and let's use as many strict-sounding words as we can find to show people that we mean business. Isn't it interesting that government, which has been making rules for hundreds of years that apply to everybody and that have very serious consequences, like fines and imprisonment, takes a very different tack from organizations, profit associations, public utilities, universities, why are they all using language that sounds so aggressive? There are two reasons. The first reason is because we learn to make rules from our parents. The people who gave us rules when we were children, parents, teachers, guardians, etc., they were the people who modeled how to make rules for us. The problem is that they were adults making rules for children, whereas what we need today are adults making rules for other adults. That's a totally different skill, and most people don't make the adjustment. That's the first reason. The second reason is a little more complicated, and I'm going to cover it in the next policy brief. A lot of the information comes from my book, Respectful Policies and Directives, which you can get online or at any bookstore. I hope this has been useful for you. Please feel free and leave a comment, and if you think there's somebody you know who might benefit from this, share it around.